Hey folks, Damon here, and today we're taking a look at a fat PS2 that I recently picked up for about 25 bucks. It came with 2 controllers, 2 memory cards, a dozen or so games, as well as all the cords. I powered it up and tested it, but as you can tell it's really dirty. You can see that the front grille is entirely clogged up. The memory card and controller ports are all really filthy, so it's just in need of a good cleaning. Flip it over and you can see the fan blades are pretty nasty. So let's just open it up and see what we can do. First things first is the tamper seal, which you might have to break if it hasn't been broken already. You can use a knife or a screwdriver to cut it, or just peel it off, whatever works. There you go, the warranty is broken, but you know, it's only about 2 decades after it expired. Disclaimer, this procedure is only for the fat model PS2s. There's going to be 8 screws located on the bottom. These ones are long screws and these ones are short screws, so just keep that in mind when you're putting it back together. The long ones go over here and the short go over here. You can use a flathead to remove the rubber feet and the plastic plugs. I found that a smaller, thinner bladed flathead was able to get under the edges a bit better. After you've removed them all, go ahead and use a standard No. 2 Phillips screwdriver to remove the 8 screws. If you've got a magnetic parts tray, that will help you keep everything organized. As you can see, these are the long screws and these are the short screws. At this point, you should have 4 short screws and 4 long screws. You can already see that the case is starting to split open, which makes it easy for us to get inside. Just work your way around the console, starting at the back, and work your way towards the front. It might feel like it's getting tight around the front, but I found that pulling from the back up and towards the front gets the top shell off pretty easily. As you open it though, be mindful of the ribbon cable that connects the power and reset buttons to the motherboard, so don't pull too hard. You can gently work these guys out by pulling up on the rear of the black plastic while gently pushing in the power and reset buttons. It should lift right out. At this point, you can see that we have the top shell removed and it's looking pretty nasty in there. It needs to be cleaned pretty bad. I'll take it outside and blow it out with the air compressor. Make sure you get all the nooks and crannies as well as the ports, but for right now I'm just going to set it aside. Let's bring this back over, and next I'm going to pull out the power supply receptacle. If you look, it exposes a screw that we need to remove to separate the motherboard from the bottom half of the shell. Just use a regular No. 2 Phillips and remove that screw, as well as the 2 at the front, which secure the controller and memory card ports, which as you can see are really dirty. So go ahead and take those out. There's one on each side of the port assembly. That should allow it to just pull right out. You do have some slack on the ribbon cable, but don't pull too hard. Remember that these screws are brass, which makes it easy to identify when you're putting it back together. Oops, looks like I forgot to remove a screw that secures the fan to the bottom shell. Go ahead and take it out now and set it aside with the other brass screws. At this point, you can remove this black plastic piece. There's a screw right here, so set it aside with the other ones and start sliding that rear cover up. You can see that the fan slides into this cover, but the wires are extremely short, so be careful. I'll take some Q-tips and blow out the fan later. Don't forget to clean the inside of the fan cover, as it's pretty nasty too. You can now start to separate the bottom half of the shell, but it can be a pain. Just keep wiggling it back and forth and work your way around. What you're left with is the motherboard and disk drive. The bottom shell is now off, and as you can see, it's pretty nasty. The front mesh is pretty clogged up, so you can use some soap and water or compressed air to get everything clean. Next up, we've got the controller and memory card ports. To remove this, what you can do is flip it over and look closely at the black tab right here. You need to flip it up or away from the ribbon cable. As you can see, when it's flipped up, the ribbon cable already tries to come out. Remember that when you need to reinstall this, the black side of the ribbon cable should match the black tab, not the white side. You can see just how much crap is built up inside these plugs. So with some compressed air and Q-tips, I'm going to clean it out. If you want to remove the power and reset buttons, all you have to do is reach in and gently unhook the ribbon cable from its routing channel. Then reach in as far as you can and pull the ribbon cable straight out. You can see right in there where it goes, so keep that in mind. With the power and reset buttons separated, it's going to make it a lot easier to clean. If you need to remove the power receptacle for any reason, you can see that there's a spring lock on it, so just disengage the spring lock and pull the plastic connector out. Make sure not to pull on the wires, but the actual white connector itself. The fan doesn't have much slack and goes deep inside, so I'm just going to leave it where it's at. Be mindful that the fan wires are extremely thin gauge, so be really careful to avoid damaging them. So next I have this small Phillips screwdriver. It's a Phillips number 0. You can find them in many jeweler's screwdriver kits. You can use that to remove these 4 screws on top of the disc tray housing. They're really small, so be careful not to lose them. Now that it's separated, go ahead and clean it out. There's no point in leaving that much dust and debris so close to your discs, as we don't want to get them scratched. The tray won't actually open unless you apply power and press the eject button, but unless you're servicing the disk drive, you shouldn't need to open it. Go ahead and wipe it down in here, but be mindful of the laser. Try to avoid scratching it as it's very delicate. At this point, I've taken all the parts out to my shop and blown everything out with an air compressor. Now I'll just wipe everything down with some alcohol and paper towels, using Q-tips to get into all the nooks and crannies. You can see how much nasty crap is baked onto these parts, so try to get them as clean as possible. At this point, you can go ahead and put the disc tray cover back on. When you put it back on, make sure to line up these holes and these tabs. Remember, it's these really small Phillips head screws. Make sure not to drop them like I just did. Remember to wipe off as much excess alcohol as possible. It will evaporate either way, but the less there is to wipe off, then the faster it'll dry. For this part, you can go ahead and reconnect the controller and memory card assembly. You'll see that there's a black line on this cable, and that shows just about how far in it needs to go into the connector. Just gently push it in and flip down the tab to secure the ribbon cable. Next, I'm going to clean and reinstall the power and reset buttons. Make sure that the blue side of the ribbon cable is on the same side as the other two ribbon cables next to it. It won't go in as far as the other two though, so don't worry if it looks like it's sticking out a little bit. Now I'm going to put the board back into the bottom half of the shell. Just gently line up the motherboard's ports with the slots in the shell and it should slide right in. Check all the way around and make sure it's seated all the way. Go ahead and grab those brass screws and reinstall the controller and memory card ports. Now you can grab the rear fan cover and watch as I struggle to fit the square into the square-shaped hole. Nope, that's not right. Spin, spin, maybe that way. Yeah! So remember, the fan should be tight up against the cover, and there are indexing holes to make it idiot-proof. I'm just dumber than your average idiot though, so it took me a minute to figure it out. Grab another brass screw and thread it into the hole where the power cable receptacle goes. You'll see at this point that I missed a screw, and it goes right next to the fan where it's outlined in yellow. I found the screw under a paper towel after I had already hooked it up and powered it on, so I had to tear it all the way back down again just to put that stupid screw back in. Now it's time to reinstall the power cord receptacle. Just slide it in with the notch facing down, there's nothing fancy here. Next up is to reinstall the power and reset button, which I found to be a bit tricky. You need to route the cable so that it goes under the black plastic and comes out towards the middle of the top shell. Finish up by closing the lid. Start by hooking the top shell over the front of the console and swing it over the back, and it should snap together really easy. Replace the expansion port cover and flip it over to secure the two halves of the shell. We'll start with the 4 small screws first, which go over here. The 4 long screws come next, and then the caps. The 4 rubber feet go on the outside corners, while the 4 plastic caps snap into the remaining holes. Flip it over and you're done. Looking good too. If this video helped you out, then don't forget to help me out by giving it a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button to see the videos I'll be putting out next. I've got plans to talk about game collecting for both new and old consoles as well as PC. Stay tuned.